Okay, Mike again, the Forthian Digital Shaman, the Lord of O.R.D. Anyways, get back to the reading of Journeys Out of the Body by Robert A. Monroe, a legend classic. In the research of out-of-body experiences, there's the Monroe Institute to think about. We're on part 2, or chapter 2, I guess. Let's see. Hopefully I can get this. The last reading I did, synchronicity, I really screwed it up as far as breaking it down into sections. But anyways, search and research. What does one do when faced with an unknown? Turn away? Forget about it? In this case, two factors negated that possibility. One was nothing more than curiosity. The second, how can one forget or ignore an elephant in the living room? Or, more to the point, a ghost in the living room? On the other side of the scale, where the conflict and anxieties very, very real, very disturbing. On the other side of the scale, were the conflicts and anxieties very real, very disturbing. There was no question that I was deeply afraid of what might happen to me if the condition continued. I was much more concerned about the possibility of a growing mental illness than a physical deterioration. I had studied enough psychology and had enough psychologists and psychiatrist friends to compound such fears. Moreover, I was afraid to discuss the matter with these friends. I was afraid that I would then be classified as their patients and lose the closeness that equally normalcy brings. No professional friends in business and community would be worse. I would be labeled a freak and a psychotic, which could seriously affect my life and the lives of those close to me. Finally, it seemed to be something to keep from my family. It seemed unnecessary that they worry along with me. It was only the definite need to explain odd actions that forced the disclosure to my wife. She accepted reluctantly because there was no other real choice, and thus she became a worried witness to incidences and events much in contradiction to her religious training. The children were then much too young to understand. Later, the matter commonplace to them. Away at college, my older daughter reported that after she and her roommate had looked around the empty dorm room one night, she said, "Daddy, if you're here, I think you better go now. I want to get undressed for bed." Actually, I was 200 miles away at the time, both physically and otherwise. Gradually, I became more accustomed to this strange addition in my life. More and more, I was slowly able to control its movements. In a few ways, it had actually become helpful. I had become reluctant to part with it. The mystery of its very presence had aroused my curiosity. Even after I had determined that there was no physiological cause and that I was no more insane than most of my fellow men, the fear persisted. It was a defect, illness, or deformity that had to be hidden from normal people. There was no one to talk to about the problem other than an occasional meeting with Dr. Bradshaw. The only other solution seemed to be some form of psychotherapy, but a year or 5 or 10 of daily interviews costing thousands of dollars with no promised results didn't seem very efficient. It was very lonely in those early days. Finally, I began to experiment with this strange aberration, keeping notes of each event. I also began to read in areas of study long neglected in my life pattern. Religion had not greatly influenced my thinking, yet it seemed that this was the only remaining body of writings and knowledge of man in which I could look for answers. Beyond childhood church-going and rare attendance with a friend, God and church and religion had meant little to me. In fact, I hadn't given the matter much thought one way or the other, as it simply didn't invoke my interest. In my superficial reading of past and present Western philosophies and religions, I found vague references and generalities. Some seemed to fit as somebody's attempt to describe or explain similar events or incidences. Biblical and Christian writings offered many of these, all without specific cause or cures. The best advice seemed to be to pray, meditate, fast, and go to church. Absolve my sins, accept the Trinity, believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and resist evil, and resist not evil. Give myself to God. All this did nothing but add to the conflict. If this new thing in my life was good, i.e., a gift, then it evidently belongs to saints, or at least saintly types. According to religious history, I felt that qualification for sainthood was certainly above and beyond me. If this new thing was evil, then it was the work of the devil, or at least of a demon trying to possess or dispossess me, and should be exorcised. The Orthodox ministers of organized religion, whom I met politely, accepted the latter view and to varying degrees. I got the feeling I was dangerous and heretical in their eyes. They were wary. In the Eastern religions, I found more acceptance of the idea, as Dr. Bradshaw had indicated. There was much talk of the existence of the non-physical body. Again, such a condition of being was the product of great spiritual development. Only masters, gurus, and other long-trained holy men had the ability to leave their physical bodies temporarily to achieve an indescribable mystical insights. There were no details and no pragmatic explanation of what was meant by spiritual development. Implied was that in the practices of secret cults, sects, and emissaries, etc., such details were common knowledge. If this were true, what or who was I? Certainly too old to start life anew in a Tibetan monastery. The loneliness became acute. Evidently, there were no answers. Not in our culture. It was at this point that I discovered the existence of an underground in the United States. The only factors missing is that no laws existed against its function, nor is there official persecution or prosecution involved. This underground only occasionally intermingles in part with the worlds of business, science, and politics, academia, and the so-called arts. Furthermore, it definitely is not limited to the United States, but infiltrates all of Western civilization. Many people may have heard of it vaguely and casually have come in contact with it, and pass it off as just people with queer ideas. For one thing is usually certain: members of this underground who are respected in their communities don't think about the interests or beliefs that qualify them for membership unless they know you two are in the club. They have learned from experience that to be outspoken brings censure from their ministers, customers, employers, and even friends. I suspect the membership may run in millions if all would admit to their qualification. They are found in all walks of life: scientists, psychiatrists, physicians, housewives, college students, businessmen, teenagers, and at least a few ministers in formal religions. This group meets all the qualifications of an underground movement. They gather in small groups, quietly and often semi-secretly. The events are often publicly announced, but you have to be within before you can understand the notice. The participants usually discuss affairs of the underground only with other members. Other than family and close friends, who are probably also members, the community doesn't know of this secret interest in life of an underground member. If you ask him, he would deny such membership because often he doesn't realize he really is so associated. All are to some degree emotionally and intellectually dedicated to the cause. Finally, the underground has its own literature, language, technology, and to some extent demigods. At the moment, this underground is highly disorganized. In fact, there is no organization whatsoever in the usual sense of the word. Rarely even have the local groups gone so far as to adopt a title and name for themselves. So far, they are simply small but regular gatherings held in someone's living room, or at a bank's conference room, or quiet, possibly in a church rectory. This group of individuals is groping in the dark and seems to take many diverse paths, yet the goal is the same for all. However, like other kinds of underground movements, if you have become a member and you visit another city, you inevitably meet other members. It isn't planned, it just happens. Who comprises of this underground? First, the professional. At one end are the parapsychologists, very few in number. These are men who have legitimate doctorates from recognized universities, who have publicly conducted research into ESP. The most well-known of these is Dr. J.B. Rhine, formerly of Duke University, who conducted and compounded simple statistical probability card tests for some 30 years. To his satisfaction, he proves statistically that ESP is fact. His results are looked upon dubiously and for the most part unacceptably by the majority of psychologists and psychiatrists in the United States. There are others in the same category. Andrija Puarich, J.G. Pratt, Robert Crookle, Hornell Hart, Gardner Murphy, all come under this classification. If you are a member, these are familiar names. The professional spectrum runs the gamut from the parapsychologist to the roadside palmist who claims to be a gypsy or a New Delhi Indian, and who charges $5 for a quick 5-minute stock reading. Areas of interest are quite diverse, but all have interconnecting bonds of common beliefs in one way or another. The mass underground looks to the professional for information and guidance, and gives them something akin to hero worship. Anyone who writes a book or organizes a foundation, conducts research, has a major experience, studied with the great professional, gives psychic readings, conducts classes in mind and or soul development, heals by faith, is an accredited astrologer, minister of divine science or spiritualism, trance meditation, outer space saucers, Dovati, hypnosis. These are the professionals. Most derived, all are part of their income from this activity. Many have developed professional jealousies for each other, often are inclined to be suspicious of techniques and theories propounded outside of their particular activity. They may even subtly deride or look with tolerance, superior amusement at results unrelated to their specialty. This could well explain why, as of now, there is no organization in the underground. Yet, in spite of themselves, the professionals are drawn to one another. Their common interest forces this. There are no others with whom they can share their thoughts and experiences as equals and with understanding. This is not in any way intended to cast aspersions or discredit upon the professionals. They are a completely fascinating and wonderful group of people, each in his own way, whatever it may be, is seeking after truth. What a dull world it would be without them once you have become a member of the underground. For the underground consumer, there are magazines, newspapers, lectures, book clubs. At least 50 new underground books are published each year, many by top houses, and even TV and radio programs, the latter eventually put together by overeager members, have not been successful because the underground is still very much a minority group. The basic public reaction is, you don't really believe in that stuff, do you? Who then makes up the mass of this underground? Contrary to what one might expect, they are not merely a conglomerate of silly, uneducated, superstitious, unreasoning misfits. True, some of the like are included, but at no greater percentage than is found in the general population. As a matter of fact, if it could be surveyed, it is quite probable that their average IQ would be far above that of the general cross-section of Western humanity. The common bond or cause that draws them together is simple. All have a belief that 1. Man's inner life is neither understood nor fully expressed in our contemporary society, and 2. This inner self has capabilities to act and perform mentally and materially to a degree unknown and unrecognized by modern science. These are people whose prime avocation is to read, talk, think, discuss, and participate in anything psychic or spiritual. This is all that is needed for membership. Perhaps you are in the club and didn't realize it. How do these people get that way? The most common answer is to experience or to be part of some phenomena that cannot be explained by modern scientific and philosophical or religious teachings. One type of person shrugs it off, sweeps it under the rug, and forgets about it. The other, who eventually becomes a member, tries to find some answers. I qualified for membership because I couldn't find any other source of information. Unfortunately, the information I was looking for was very sparse indeed. Even in this strange new old world, but at least there were those who seriously considered the possibility that the second state could and did happen. It soon became apparent that the underground started more than 100 years ago or earlier, when present-day science began to organize men's concepts and rid them of unreasoning, unsupported knowledge. In such efforts to purify anything that did not or had not yet met the test of empiricism was ruthlessly discarded by intellectual leadership. Those who continued to hold any of the discarded beliefs fell into disrepute. If they stubbornly persisted and still wished to achieve or accept and accept it in society, they had no choice but to go underground with their secret ideas while maintaining another image publicly. Many who refused to practice this deceit became martyrs. To date, in this enlightened society, the same attitude still exists to a very great extent of the professionals who are known by their fellows as proponents of parapsychology or anything similar. There may be 5 who still command admiration and respect publicly from their profession, be it medicine, psychology, psychiatry, or the physical sciences. At this stage, I believe I have met all 5. Sadly, I am a little wiser through no fault of theirs. They just don't know much about the second state or second body. Most of all, I enjoy the people I have met in the underground. I found them in small towns, big cities, in business, in church groups, in university, even in the American Psychiatric Association. As a rule, they are truly gentle people. They are jolly with a warm sense of humor. They are a happy group who can laugh when necessary at their own serious interest. Whether intentionally or not, they are the most altruistic and empathetic cross-section of humanity I have known. It must be no accident that they are the most religious in the true sense of the word. If this appears to be a curt dismissal of all other sources of material uncovered in the psychic writings available, it is not so intended. Each has its own version of truth, and perhaps there are indeed many truths. I have sat in seances with trance mediums and asked definite questions, received vague answers, which were to me pure evasions, when a straightforward reply would have meant so much. Yet later, to my astonishment, in one such case I participated in a second body experiment that verified to me and others the authenticity of this medium's ability. Truth here is truly a mystery. The work of Edgar Cayce, virtually a Latter-day Saint in the psychic world, was without doubt most evidential and well investigated, but unbelievable in terms of present-day science and medicine. Most definitely, here was truth unfolding, and history may not record it exact, except in some dim archives. That should be it either. Today, some 20 years after his death, no more is known as to how his ability worked and what it was than on the day he died. Cayce's readings were helpful but not exceedingly difficult to bring into concrete focus as they relate to second state existence. He confirmed it, but did not explain. Much of his material in the area is clouded by the haze of a strong religious conditioning. This leaves it open to interpretation. So Cayce's translators, ministers, have sprung up to provide such intercession. There are others even now who evidently can perform similarly to Cayce. One gave quite accurate physical reports of me and provided some general data on my second state activities, which were neither enlightening nor provable. They did convince me of the validity of her ability by all means. Again, another truth to me and others who participated, but no direct answers that could be used in a court of law. Several psychics performed life readings for me. They included wide generalizations, but were unable to give direct, straightforward answers to simple questions. If genuine, and who am I to say they are not, these psychics must be definitely limited to their specific perception. Either that or they suffer problems in translation from symbols to articulation. I can well appreciate how this latter might occur. It was in my readings and contacts with this branch of human thought I fondly called the underground that I finally found strong glimmerings of what was happening to me. If I hadn't been involved personally, I would not have believed what I found. At the same time, it was comforting to discover that I was not unique. What was it all about? Simply, I was performing astral projection. Dr. Bradshaw had given me the clue, although he himself had heard about such things only remotely. Astral projection to the uninitiated is a term given to the technique of leaving one's physical body temporarily and moving about in a non-material or astral body. Many connotations have been given the word astral and many interpretations, scientific and otherwise. The word scientific is used cautiously because the modern scientific world, in the West at least, neither recognizes nor is seriously aware of even the possibility of such things. In the obscure history of mankind, it is an entirely different matter. The word astral has dim origins in the early mystical and occult events which involve witchcraft, sorcery, incantations, and other seeming foolishness which modern man looks upon as silly and superstitious nonsense. As no attempt was made to delve deeply into this area, I still didn't know what the word astral means. Thus, I prefer to stick to the term second body or second state. This type of literature, which still flourishes, depicts an astral world composed of many levels and planes, which is where people go when they die. The person who travels around in his astral body can make short visits to their places, to talk with the dead people, participate in activities there, and come back to the physical body apparently none the worse for wear. There have been times when I have fervently hoped, prayed for the latter to be true. In order to perform this miraculous feat, one had to be arduously trained, or better still, spiritually developed, according to the occultists. These teachings have supposedly been handed down secretly through history to enlighten those who had become advanced enough to receive them. Evidently, from time to time, there were those who revealed the secret or accidentally learned the technique. In the past, they had been canonized, castigated, cremated, laughed at, locked up for such public revelation. This doesn't make the future seem very promising in my case. Paradoxically, much of the data contained in my notes tends to confirm this occult approach to the subject, which came as quite a shock. Using liberal interpretation and translations into the modern idiom, much of it fell neatly into place. Also, much was left unsaid, although I do not know why. According to the literature of the psychic underground, the religious mystical history of man constantly makes reference to this second body. Long before Christianity and the Bible appeared, cultures in Egypt, India, and China, to name a few, held the second body idea as standard operating procedure. Historians have found these references again and again, but evidently consigned them to mythology of the times. If one reads the Bible from this point of view, the belief is confirmed many times in both the Old and New Testament, and the Catholic Church are found consistent reports of saints and other religious figures having such experiences, some of them willfully. Even in the Protestantism, devout followers have reported the out-of-body experience during some form of religious ecstasy. In the Orient, the concept of the second body has long held a natural and accepted position of reality. Again, this is an entire study in itself, and there are numerous underground books and authorities on Oriental cultures that affirm the concept of the second body. There are supposed to be in existence today those adepts, lamas, monks, gurus, and the like who exercise mental and physical powers, including second body activity, that are completely at odds with the present scientific knowledge. Largely, these have been ignored in their materialistic society because they cannot be duplicated in the laboratory. In the files of various psychic research organizations here and abroad, there are hundreds of case history reports of out-of-body experiences. Such reports go back at least 100 years, and many more are found in various writings of the past. They are there for anyone who wishes to investigate the phenomena. Virtually all of such reported experiences are spontaneous, one-time only events. Usually they have come at a time when the individual was either physically ill or debilitated, or during an intense and emotional crisis. All these to be highly subjective, yet the great mass of these reports is evidential in itself. During this century, several impressive collections of these experiences have been published and should be required reading if one pursues the subject. The weakness in all of them is apparent. Most are basically reportorial, supplemented by conjecture. No specifics based upon direct examination or experimentation are included. Reason, evidently, there has been no such solid research performed. And very rare instances, there are published records of individuals who could deliberately and willfully induce the second state and move about in their second body. There may be more, but only two stand out in recent history. If others have and are performing this act, they have kept the results to themselves. The first of these is Oliver Fox, an Englishman who was active in psychic research and practices. He published fairly detailed reports of out-of-body experiences and techniques for achieving this state. Except in the underground of the 1920s, his work received little attention. Yet he very definitely attempted to bring the experience into the framework of understanding of his era. The second and most well-known is Sylvain Muldoon. Sylvain Muldoon, is that how you pronounce it? Who published several works on the subject in collaboration with Hereward Carrington over the period of 1938 to 1951. Muldoon was the projectionist, and Carrington was a consistent researcher in psychic phenomena. To date, their books have been the classics in the field and offer interesting reading. In my after-the-fact investigation, I again wondered at much that obviously had been omitted. I wondered at much that obviously had been omitted. Also, little or no empirical experimental tests were made to provide data for a serious yet objective investigator. The most recent has been a book by the author of Yarem, a woman, Mary Backwards. It too offers several clues, but no solid continuity relating to my case. Significant attempts at scientific study and evaluation have been made recently by several noteworthy men, such as Hornwell Hart, Nadar Fador, Robert Crockwell, Crookwell, from Robert Crookwell, and others with good academic backgrounds. Most of these are relatively free of the distorting factors present in so much of the underground literature, and their titles will be found along with other recent publications in the bibliography. All serve to verify the fact of the existence of the second body, but bring forth little or no concrete data at the experimental non-philosophic level. Let's see, did I say that right? No data at the experimental non-philosophic level. Again, how can one discuss experiments that have not taken place? The most consistent problem encountered in associating with the underground has been to avoid submergence of the analytical approach and the vast morass of theological thought and belief. Once, not too long ago, man thought electricity was God. Before that, the sun, lightning, and fire. Our sciences told us these things were ridiculous and tried to show us through experimentation. Perhaps the second body operating in the second state can provide the quantum jump to prove God empirically. Then there will be no more underground. The Psychic Underground provided me with many new friends, but few specific answers to such questions as, what do I do now? To my surprise, they looked at me for answers. There appeared to be only one remaining path to take. Hundreds of experiments spread over 12 years and still continuing have brought forth conclusions that seem inescapable, yet alien to my environmental conditioning. And the material to come, the test will be yours. And that's the end of chapter 2. I think I'll just read them in sections, chapter 2. Unfortunately, there's 21 chapters, so it's got to be 21 sections. And I know that people are not interested in my readings, but I'm doing it anyways. Not as a popularity contest, but from